Welcome back inside the Hall of Fame. I'm Booker T along with my man Brad Gilmore. And we talking about comments I made about Braun Strowman, being no longer with the WWE, being one of the last big guys of the business. Yeah, man, I truly believe that a lot of people took my comments, and I don't know if they kind of changed the wording around and made it mean something a little bit different. But there again, let me reiterate, as far as big guys in the wrestling business, let's just think about this here for a second. Back in the day, um, I'm 6'3". I was 240 pounds back then. I was a pretty big guy, but it was so many more guys on the roster that had me beat. Such I heard a comment was made, and they say in AEW, Billy Gunn is a monster. And I'm gonna tell you, that's true. It's Billy Gunn, 6'5". He's 260 pounds, 250, 60 pounds easily. You know what I mean? But it's not that many guys in AEW that's as big as Billy Gunn, other than maybe a Lance Archer. Other than Lance Cage. I mean, not Lance Cage. Brian Cage. Brian
Brian
Cage.
Cage, yeah.
And Brian Cage is not as taller, but he's a pretty big guy. But I don't look at Brian Cage. Brian Cage is a monster in AEW. Am I correct or not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when you see someone like Braun Strowman come along, man, he's an enigma. It did. I heard people say, well, Andre the Giant, you know what I mean? He worked out as a big guy back in the day. Well, Andre the Giant was a giant, but it was a ton of big guys in the company that he had to work with, that he could work with. It's not a ton of big guys in AEW that's 6'3" tall. It's not a ton of those. It's not a ton of those guys in WWE as well. Today, go back 20 years ago, it was many of those guys that you could put a guy like Andre in position, a guy like Almost in position, and then have guys to actually be able to work, as well as be able to work and get better, because a lot of those big guys were really good workers at the same time. So he taught the Giants how to work at the same time. So I don't know. People can look at it and think I was throwing shade on Braun Strowman. I wasn't. I'm just saying the business landscape, if you don't see it, it's totally different. And they said, well, WWE, they could have figured out how to get Braun Strowman over. Yeah, perhaps they could have figured out a way how to get Braun Strowman over. But we don't know. We don't know what entails and how long, what goes into, getting a guy over. Most of the times back in the day, guys got themselves over.
Yeah.
They didn't worry about even the Giants, the Oz's of the world, which is Kevin Nash, by the way. You know what I mean? They figured out how to get themselves over, or they got put in a position, just like I said, with Braun Strowman. I say if he does come into one of these organizations, they got to figure out how to somewhat like Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels did back in the day. When they brought Diesel in, he was the muscle. And then, next thing you know, they put him in the ring, and man, well, this guy could go. Man, wait a minute, this guy's getting old. Wait a minute, the fans love him. Boom, let's break him up. Let's let him have his own. That's the way it normally happens, even for Almost come in. He's not a accomplished wrestler or anything like that. He's not a grizzled veteran or anything like that. So put him with AJ Styles, put him in tag matches. Then he can actually learn how to work from just standing on the apron, watching these guys go out there and perform. So understand when I talk about a giant, someone like a Braun Strowman, you got to figure out how to put this guy in place for him to be successful first and foremost. Did I think it was putting Braun Strowman in a place to be successful, him coming in and picking up a semi and turning it over? No, I didn't think so, because I just think from a realistic perspective, if I see Braun Strowman in a bar, he's the last person I'm going to mess with. He's the last person I'm going to spout off something to. It's a way to get this guy over without actually making him super natural. Okay, that's just my opinion.
No, I see what you're saying too from the Giants of yesteryear, and Braun Strowman is a giant in by today's standards, and on AEW roster he would be the biggest guy on the roster, right?
Easily.
Yeah, he's the biggest guy on the roster. Right now, if Godfather were working currently, the Godfather would be like a giant, right?
The monster.
He'd be a monster. So from that perspective, I understand what you're saying. And the other thing with Braun in WWE, I think that and this is, and by no means am I diminishing what Braun Strowman was able to do, because I was a Braun Strowman fan, but I think that they did everything, in my opinion, right by him in his presentation, right? I mean, you put him with Bray Wyatt at first, let him learn how to work. He gets over as the Wyatt family. You break him off. He goes on this monster run. Remember, he had those 6-7 months of squash matches where he was taking on 2 guys at a time or what have you. Then you let him fight another giant. You put him up against Big Show for several months. I think he worked Kane for several months, works Brock Lesnar for a few months. Then you put the title on him, let him run with it. And it was during that title run where something happened. I don't know what it was. Something happened to where he wasn't clicking the same way that he was. And I don't know if he got the title and he's like, oh, I've arrived now. I don't need to think about anything because I'm the champion. I don't need to evolve the character. I don't need to think how to get better. I don't know if that was the thing, but it was something after he won the title from Goldberg that derailed the Strowman Express, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of people say, him going out and, not beating Brock Lesnar. And my thing is this, you go out and he beats Brock Lesnar, who's the most believable guy, on the roster.
One of the most believable in history.
Perhaps. And then what do you go from there? Where do you go from there? All right, we know we can do with Brock Lesnar. But what do we go from there as far as Braun go? I mean, can we bank on Braun to go out here and, be the guy that's going to pull the number in the next WrestleMania? That's what people don't understand. People just thinking about their fan favorite, the one that they like the most, or if I'm putting somebody down, or if I'm just toying WWE line or anything like that. No, that's not it. I'm just telling it like it is. I see a guy like Braun Strowman finding a spot somewhere on somebody's roster, but it's going to be up to the promotion how Braun Strowman is to be looked at going forward. Because let's think about this as well. Braun Strowman is going to have to rebuild himself all the way from the bottom, being a totally different character. Okay, the monster among men, that gimmick is over and done with. If is Braun Strowman going to try to take that same character to the next company that he goes to? That's going to be the question right there. As far as Braun going out and what kind of match is Braun going to go out and have? Is it going to be the same match he had in WWE as Braun Strowman, or is he going to go out and evolve? Is Braun Strowman going to be able to work with smaller guys and those matches be believable when it's time for the little guy to kick out or whatever, So it's so much going to play when Braun Strowman shows up in another company. And a lot of people not looking at it like that. A lot of people are just looking at it like, oh, well, he could just come in and just squash guys and just beat guys up. Well, what about me building my company now? What about what I've been building my company on? Now all of a sudden the landscape changes because one guy get fired from a company. Now, we got a spot for him, so we bring him in just to beat up all the guys that we've been building for the last 2 years. Come on, understand the landscape and what we're trying to do. Like I say, for someone like Braun to come in wherever he comes in, he's going to have to put in position to be successful first and foremost, because he cannot live off of what he's lived off for the last, I don't know how many years it's been in WWE. That's just my point.
And you're right from this instance of, back in the day, Hogan, big guy, right? Hogan's 6'6", or whatever he is, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds, 280 pounds, whatever. Hogan had a lot of other guys that size and bigger to work consistently. You had King Kong Bundy, Andre the Giant, Earthquake, Bam Bam. Yeah, yeah, Morocco,
Who
Haku, even Macho, who's big, Warrior.
Barbarian, Mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys that he could
a
work
ton of guys,
that were
ton of
big.
guys.
You mean Tugboat?
Savage, Macho Man Savage. You
Yeah,
know, I mean, he had a ton of guys to actually go out.
Yokozuna.
Everybody on the roster was considered a monster. Would be considered a monster today.
Yeah, Undertaker, Lex Luger. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the guys who are big. So you have more options for Giants, and I'm really now I'm processing what you're saying. There's not a lot of options for him, and if he squashes all your talent, which conceivably he should, based on his size, it does nothing really for your show, other than having a big guy, right?
Yeah, that's all
So
it does. That's all it does. It does nothing for everybody on your roster. Like I said, you got to figure out how you formulate everything on your roster now because you got a guy like that on the roster. And
mhm.
that's just my point. That's my opinion. That's why I think we're going to see Big Show do a whole lot because it's not a whole lot of guys Big Show can, work with. It's not a lot of guys Mark Henry can work with, but that's just the way the old mob flops. Stick around, guys. You're in the Hall of Fame. We'll be back in a minute.